Hello and welcome to this India Today special broadcast. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, joining you from the Tamil Nadu House in Delhi. And with me is the Finance Minister of Tamil Nadu, Mr. P Thiagarajan. Thank you, sir. Vanakkam. Thank you for joining us here in India Today after a long time. How are you finding Delhi?
A bit more smog than I'd like, but we all suffer the same.
You stay here long enough, you'll get used to it as well.
So.
Let's get right down to it, Mr. Thiagarajan. I think when I was going through my research to interview you, the first thing that came up was about how you're projecting that Tamil Nadu will become a $1 trillion economy by 2030. How do you plan on achieving that, especially with so many predictions and projections of a recession coming?
Yeah, actually, let me clarify that. That was not my prediction or projection. Our Chief Minister has set a goal.
Okay.
And that goal is that we should get to 1 trillion by 2030. Now, that goal has some inherent complexities or variables beyond our control. The first is that $1 trillion implies that we know what the dollar is going to be to some extent, right? But some of it is adjustable in the sense that there's also the whole inflation built in, and inflation differentials will also affect foreign exchange rates and so forth like that. But at the base assumption, we'd have to grow about 14.5% to where we ended 21-22. At least the latest estimate, 14.5% in notional terms, which if you assume inflation is going to be probably 5-6, which is a safe assumption because inflation is out of control all over the world, and inflation tends to be sticky. It's very hard to control inflation in the short term. So then we're really talking about 8.5, 7.5% real growth. Now, there's a good track record of this. If you look at Tamil Nadu between 2006 and 2011, despite the global financial crisis, the CAGR in real growth was 10.15 or 11%. So there is a track record of doing that. So Tamil Nadu is large enough an economy, has enough of global connect and attractiveness, particularly as we see the macro trends of diversification outside of China, but also meaningful consumption base because our Gini coefficient is lower than many relatively well-to-do states like Maharashtra or Gujarat. We actually have a stronger percentage of the economy that's domestic consumption. So it's not an unreasonable target to get to 1 trillion on this trajectory. We already have a project underway through tender and advisory mandate where we're going to get a more concrete, the path to 1 trillion, which industry sectors, at what years, under what trends and so forth, blueprint, But all this subject to the point you just mentioned, which is that these goals are made, on the assumption that things stay somewhat normal, right? And as you know, at least since 2008, maybe some would argue earlier than that, like I do about monetary policy, we have lived in a bit of a surreal world, right? There's probably trillions of dollars of excess liquidity out there. As long as it was only market liquidity and Reserve Bank liquidity, it seemed to not affect inflation in the way that traditional models would have indicated. But now we have a real problem because during COVID, fiscal kind of stimulus came in a big way around the world. Right? One would argue maybe not as much in India, but in many parts of the world there was a lot of fiscal stimulus, and that has certainly now stoked inflation at a global level to unseen in decades levels, right? Like 10%, 8%, 9%. There's no history of this kind of inflation with this much liquidity out there. And so there's a definite question in everybody's mind. Is a soft landing possible? Is it possible to contain inflation and withdraw liquidity from such extreme kind of outlier scenarios as we are in today without causing a major global recession? So we're all subject to that. If that happens, then of course we have to reassess at what rate we'll grow. The one point I have made is that because such a possibility exists, because there's a significant probability, non-zero probability of a global recession in the next couple of years, that at least for the state of Tamil Nadu, under the guidance of my Chief Minister, I've started preparing for such a scenario in terms of looking for additional sources of liquidity, rolling over under the 15th Finance Commission terms, rolling over debt capacity, keeping our fiscal situation very controlled, so that till 2026 we can roll over the unused borrowing limit, as you know. So rolling over debt borrowing capacity, looking for assets and so forth, and valuations. I don't want to get too much into detail, but we are certainly planning for that scenario. That scenario is to alleviate the consequences of a global recession. We have some plans in place. But obviously that will affect the pace at which you can get to 1 trillion. That's beyond our control.
Yeah. Let's focus on the national picture as well. You're saying that you're ensuring that Tamil Nadu in a way is cushioned and protected when a recession hits. The IMF has already
I should say maybe if, not when.
If.
But yeah,
all right, sure. But the IMF has said, and has painted a very, very gloomy picture, honestly, for 2023 as well, even for India. In the national picture, what do you believe is being done by the government, and is enough being done by the central government to ensure that, our economic growth, our progress isn't really hindered?
Look, I'm not privy to the plans of the union government, right? I do my job. People who are elected and appointed to do that job, do that job. So I would say broadly there are only 3 kind of macroeconomic things a government can do to plan for a recession, right? One is to have identified sources of liquidity within the system that you can either prioritize or redirect, in spending in terms of difficult times and so forth. In the case of Tamil Nadu, I had announced also a reconciliation initiative, which is continuing to help us. I have not revealed the extent to which it does, but all the kind of, because we do cash accounting as a country and as a state, looking around for pockets of liquidity that are listed as spent, but in fact are actually parked somewhere else. And most states and the union government already has done this exercise once in 2016 or 17 after this current government came. So we are doing a similar exercise. So one is to have these kind of pools of liquidity that are standby. The second is to have borrowing capacity, because the recession doesn't mean that there is no liquidity. In fact, we are in a world of excess liquidity from quantitative easings 1, 2, 3 and many versions of it. By some estimates, at the peak of the post-COVID kind of turn, there's probably between 8 and 10 trillion dollars of excess liquidity between all the major central banks of the world that have been pumped in through QE and zero rates and so forth. So even a recession does not mean that money goes away. A recession means that the economy is not generating kind of new jobs and new growth as rapidly as it should, but there's still a pool of liquidity in the market, right? Yeah. So the capacity to tap that pool after your emergency liquidity, to tap that pool, and in our case, because the union sets the borrowing limits under Section 293, Article 293.3 of the Constitution, and because of the 15th Finance Commission terms, we roll over. The union government has no such constraint. They don't answer to anybody. They just amend the FRBM Act and keep going. So they have infinite capacity to borrow if they can convince the markets that such borrowing is prudent and will be handled properly and therefore will not affect the credit rating. The only real constraint the union government has, more for states, the first constraint is the union government, because it tells us what we can borrow independent of our FRBM Act equivalents. But the union government has no such constraint other than the capital market. So they need to find a way to keep with the rating agencies in a way that they can borrow when the need comes. And the third, of course, is to look for assets that you can liquidate in a crisis. And the union government already has a pipeline for monetization. So, and what you really have to be able to do to cushion the shock, and this is the key, is to find a way to support the bottom of the pyramid, right? Because the top of it will take care of itself, and there'll be some market equilibrium about how much investment and how much new factories and new demand, all that. What doesn't get factored in that requires fiscal policy, that requires government intervention, is the bottom of the pyramid, right? So from subsistence to keeping that demand at kind of reasonable levels. That's really the job of the government in a recession. And I think that, it's the same for all governments. The union government has a different set of tools and a different set of constraints. We have a much less wide set of tools.
Limited set of tools.
And so, we have to plan a bit before that.
You've been critical of several policies of the Narendra Modi government, more so perhaps of demonetization. And today is the anniversary of demonetization. Why did you believe that that was a bad policy to begin with, flawed completely?
Well, I think as bad a policy as it was, and I'll say it was bad because it was ill-conceived, the ambition that it had, all the stated ambitions, Wiping out counterfeits. We have much worse counterfeits now, percentage of circulation or total volume than we had then. Going to digital. The amount of cash in circulation today is 2x or 3x that was there at demonetization, right? With the public, you've seen all the stats. Eradicating black money, 100% of the money got returned. So whatever the stated objectives of the demonetization were, all those have turned out to be failures. That's a different issue. But much, much worse than any of that was the rash and rapid, almost unthoughtful way that it was implemented. There's no history of any demonetization. Even North Korea printed the new notes first and then demonetized the old notes. We didn't have the new notes printed. Not only did we not have the new notes printed, we didn't have a reasonable line of sight to when we would have enough notes printed. We didn't have enough ink, we didn't have enough paper, we didn't have enough mint printing capacity. So this notion that you can somehow create this new currency 2000 without even having it set for the ATMs or the automated fillers and all this stuff, just because you can print 2000, you can print less and therefore get over taking out much more 500s and thousands, is a fallacy, right? Because 2000 is not fungible unless you have change. If I go to spend 2000, how many people spend 2000 or the bulk of 2000 on any given transaction? They don't. So the 2000 rupee note is actually a better store of value than it is an actual fungible transaction document or instrument. So all of these were just so poorly planned. The execution was horrendous, right? Sure. And this notion that first you could exchange, then you couldn't exchange, and they change the rules every day. Then and the greatest fallacy of all, which I keep pointing out every time I get. All of a sudden, one day, the Revenue Secretary of the Government of India makes an announcement that as of tomorrow morning, all tellers will start putting ink on fingers, permanent ink on fingers, like the voting booths.
Like the voting, yeah.
I mean, there are like, I'm told, 1,60,000 branches or something at that time in India. You don't have the capacity to print the notes and get them there or to bring the old notes back. How are you going to now, within 24 hours, procure the ink, distribute it, train people, put up CCTV cameras to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do? I mean, it's fantasy land. Next day, they cancel the program, right? Yeah. I'll give you the last thing that I think was devastatingly bad. Nowhere do you do demonetization without a methodology of cancelling the notes at the point of collection. The minute it gets turned back into the bank, they should have punched holes in it or put a seal saying cancel or done something to make sure that same note cannot recirculate.
Yeah.
The system is not leak-proof.
So the implementation, the execution, as you pointed out, is
the ambition was overarching and not within the realm of achievement. The implementation made it horrendously bad, and therefore the consequences are devastating. And in complex systems, it's very rare to say which effect can be traced to which cause, right? Because there's so many variables in complex systems. That's true of government, that's true of the economy. Yeah. But in this case, I would vouch for the fact that we are still paying the price and the long-term consequences of that one act so many years ago, because it was so devastating. Nowhere in the history of the world have you seen 86% of the money wiped out overnight.
The implementation, yes, was very much flawed. We saw that on the ground. We saw people suffering. But you talk about the motive, you talk about the ambition, and the idea of demonetization itself wasn't a bad one.
No, listen, ideas are only as good as you can make their fulfillment occur. Right? If you start with the idea, you have some ambition. If that ambition is fulfilled, we can have a question of whether it was a good idea or not. If the ambition is not fulfilled in even 1%, I'm telling you, in every statistic that they originally said, cutting counterfeits and fakes, fail. Removing black money, fail. Reducing cash in circulation, fail.
The BJP would argue otherwise.
No, the stats tell you otherwise. I mean, listen, if the statistics are no longer the basis for opinion, then what is the point of having a debate? I feel like blue is the right color and you feel like green. There's no objectivity. You have to look, I'm saying, look at the amount of notes being caught in counterfeits and fakes. Look at the amount of money in circulation. This is not a fantasy number. The RBI publishes how much money is in circulation. Look at the proportion of transactions that are happening in cash or digital. Look at the return. If black money was supposed to be caught, I spoke to somebody very senior in the system. And they had expectations that 2-3 lakh crores of money would be caught out of the 16 or whatever. 100% of the money came back, right? So I'm saying any idea is potentially good. If the outcomes don't come within, sniffing distance of your ambition, then, on what basis do you say it was a good idea? It's hard for me to say.
Okay. I want to bring it back to Tamil Nadu, and I think when we talk about the economy in Tamil Nadu, one of the aspects that some have raised concerns over, including the Tamil Nadu governor, for example, is over investments in Tamil Nadu. He's suggesting that states like Maharashtra, states like Karnataka are racing far ahead and Tamil Nadu is being left behind. What do you have to say about that?
Again, I would say the statistics indicate otherwise, right? If you look at the data, I haven't looked at it in the last quarter, but if you look at it till the June 30th quarter, I haven't seen the September 30th numbers, we were up almost 45-50% year over year. And no other state was at that pace of increase, right? Number one. Number two, the union government plays a big role in how these projects get directed, the mega projects, right? Because they give the PLI and they have their hand on the scale. I don't want to talk politics, but normally governors should not be in the fray of politics. Governors should mind administrative issues, and kind of the less they say, the more respectable and honored they are. Tamil Nadu governor, unfortunately, doesn't have these norms. Maybe
so you
he's
believe
limited.
he's overreaching?
I mean, it's not just me, right? I mean, our party MPs have written to the union government asking for his recall. That's not a mild step. So, I want to stay above the fray. I don't want to get into the trenches of political warfare with somebody who should be above politics. So I don't want to comment more than that. But I would say the statistics are that we're doing very well.
Is the concern valid, though, in the sense that, Tamil Nadu is known to be an electronics hub, and yet you had a Foxconn, a semiconductor plant going to Gujarat?
Not every plant in the country should go to the same place, right? I would say that if you look at the market share of total Foxconn activity, I would say Tamil Nadu is in the top 1 or top 2, in the country today, in Apple phone manufacturing and assembly. So, you can twist the data any way you want. So we are accountable to the public. Public knows how much jobs are being created, how much growth is coming, how much investment is coming. I myself have been on 2-3 trips. There's huge amount of interest. The union government has their finger on the scale, and they are tipping it towards their favorite states. You can see what happened.
So you're saying it's going in favor of BJP states?
Of course. I mean,
the Prime Minister, Uddhav Thackeray is also raised,
the Prime Minister
with Vedanta, the semiconductor plant.
I completely agree with him. And the Prime Minister is on record in assembly rallies saying that only if you vote for the BJP, we'll give you benefits. Only because you voted for the BJP, we give you vaccines. How much more blatant can you be than that? I mean, it's not like a subtle point, right?
He is, of course, also talking about development, which is what a politician should be offering to people.
Yeah, maybe you and I have different perspectives of what a Prime Minister is supposed to do. Not talk about which party should be elected for getting benefits. Maybe our perception of what is a Prime Ministerial role is different. I have a constitutional view. You may have a different view.
My point is that, is there a problem in Tamil Nadu in the sense of sentiments? For example, the Thoothukudi Sterlite issue, has that dented Tamil Nadu's image as far as investments are concerned? Again, I bring back the Vedanta point.
I say you can have any number of hypothetical points. Bring me some statistics. Our tax revenues are up record much more than the union. Our growth rate is much higher than the Indian average. Our investments are up at least in the top 3 states of the country. You can have your own views about what you think ought to be right or wrong, or philosophy or culture. That's your view. The data informs my view. If the data says something different, bring me the data and I'll respond to that.
So I'll tell you what's happened in Karnataka as well. We just recently had an investment summit. And what's emerged is that perhaps Karnataka is also losing out on investments because of the image that they have, with a rise in certain communal incidents also being reported in the state. Recently in Tamil Nadu, in Coimbatore, you had a blast that was reported, and again, questions were whether that dents Tamil Nadu's image, a state that's never really seen much of these kind of incidents of reported terror attacks as well.
Yeah, again, one blast is not the basis for anything, and maybe you're relatively young, but you may not remember that Coimbatore had a much worse series of events than this in the past. So I think this particular blast, I would venture to say that Coimbatore is probably the second hub in Tamil Nadu after Chennai.
Yeah.
Will continue to be that way.
Which is why it's a concern.
No, yeah, I mean, everybody can have a concern. I'm on the ground. I'm responsible for administration. I'm saying that it will continue to show results and deliver jobs and growth faster than almost any place in India. One blast notwithstanding, or the politicization of one, it wasn't even a blast, it was a cylinder in a car going off in the middle of multiple attempts at other things.
So you maintain
that
it was
case,
a cylinder blast?
No,
because
there's no
was
maintain. There's
the
no
BJP,
maintain.
for example, the
No, there's no
BJP
maintain,
chief.
right? The record is the record. It was a cylinder in a car. There's video of the cylinders being loaded. There's the people who are doing it. They have been arrested. The case has been transferred to the NIA. It's not. Some facts are not in question, right? The facts are not interpretable by political parties because they feel like it. Facts are facts. After that, you can interpret the consequences, the implications, the history, the future and all that. But facts are facts. You can't interpret facts. If there's a video evidence of the cylinder being loaded in the car and then that car being exploded, I don't understand why you assume that every party can have a different view of that fact.
No, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
So, I had a conversation with the Tamil Nadu BJP chief, with Mr. Annamalai, and he raised a number of questions. One, he said that this was clearly a terror attack. And I don't know whether the DMK and whether you, sir, are willing to say that this was, yes, a terror attack.
On principle, I don't deign to answer questions by Mr. Annamalai, so I will refuse it now also.
Okay. So the other aspect of the Coimbatore blast is the fact that, and there were questions raised about whether the DMK didn't take it as seriously as they ought to have.
There's no question of the DMK doing anything or not doing anything. This is not a political issue.
Sure.
A government has to take it seriously or not seriously. A government took it seriously and transferred it to NIA before they asked for the case.
Why didn't Mr. Stalin, for example, visit the blast site? And when it's referred to as a cylinder blast, the fact is that what happened and the information that we've received there with sins of the accused.
No, your information cannot be of superior quality to what the government of Tamil Nadu receives. I don't think you have your own intelligence department,
I
your
agree,
own
but
NIA.
this was put out by the police as well.
No, whatever the police has been done because the administration runs the police, right? So I'm not sure why you believe you have any inside information beyond what the police has.
No, Mr. Thiagarajan, we're not talking about inside information. What I'm trying to suggest here is whether there was an attempt to downplay the blast. Like you said, this is a cylinder blast. You said Coimbatore saw something much worse.
Why should we downplay anything? The facts are the facts. I would accuse you're trying to conflagrate this into a problem that we don't have.
But this was
are you trying to throw smoke, throw oil on a burning fire?
Not at all. But
then,
we have to...
Then why do you assume? There was one incident. The incident is under investigation by the NIA. Why do you assume that this is the precursor of things to come? Are you trying to ignite a fire of terrorism in Coimbatore?
The facts that have been put out as far as the investigation goes, sir, is that they were planning much bigger. That they were
That's why it's under
much
NIA investigation. What is it that you expect you or me to be able to do beyond what the NIA can do?
There are two questions that come up here about the government. One is an intelligence failure, because this was sheer luck that it came to light. That
How do you know it's luck? I don't understand.
The cylinder went off. It was sheer luck.
Why is that luck? They plan to ignite a cylinder. The cylinder ignites. Why do you assume that's luck?
So you think it was a suicide attack?
I don't speculate on things I don't know, and that distinguishes me from you. I don't make assumptions about what it was, what it wasn't. It was an incident that is under investigation by the NIA. The NIA is not controlled by the government of Tamil Nadu. The NIA will give a report. Based on that, we can have a conversation.
But will the Stalin government, at least going by the information that we have right now, based on the investigation, deem this a terror attack?
How can we act on an investigation that is under NIA? What is it that you want us to do? Till the NIA comes back and gives us information, what is it that you want us to do? How can we, what is the point of giving an investigation to the NIA if we're going to run a parallel decision-making setup?
The BJP says the reason you gave it to the NIA is because they asked for this, they demanded it, otherwise there was no such plan.
On the record, we moved it to them before any official request came from them. That's the decision of the Chief Minister who owns the home portfolio. That's the record. I can speculate. I can say, anybody was going to do something, therefore somebody else did something. Show me a document that says that the NIA asked for it. Then we'll say, right?
So you're refusing to get into what allegations the BJP is leveling here, that, this was an attempt to protect one community,
If I was to descend to the level of answering BJP allegations, I couldn't do my job. You may consider it fit for your time. It's not fit for my time. Black and white is not fit for my time.
Why is that, though? Do you not take the BJP seriously?
I don't take rabble-rousers seriously. I don't take instigators seriously. I take reasonable human beings seriously. I don't consider the individual you mentioned as one of them, so I don't answer any of his questions.
There is an argument, however, that the BJP, Mr. Annamalai, they're spreading their wings in the state of Tamil Nadu. Do you believe that to be a reality?
No, because time will tell. I don't believe it. They may say whatever they want. Time will tell.
As far as the South is concerned, South India, we had a bypoll in Telangana recently, where the Congress was pushed essentially to third place. The BJP is coming to second place.
Comment about Telangana?
So the question,
no, you ask me about Tamil Nadu. I am not in the business of commenting about other states or other elections. Right?
Fair enough. Sticking to Tamil Nadu, another aspect, another issue that I wanted to bring up with you, Mr. Thiagarajan, is about comments that have been made recently by members of the DMK, like Mr. Raja. And this became, of course, a huge national talking point when he said that if you're a Hindu, you're a Shudra. And this has led to questions about whether the DMK is anti-Hindu. What do you have to say about that?
I can't speak for others. I am a practicing Hindu. My forefathers have done more for the temples and the people who practice Hinduism in Tamil Nadu than almost anybody I know, and certainly anybody in the BJP. If I am successful in the DMK and I get such great responsibility in such little time of being in public life, how is it possible that the DMK is an anti-Hindu party? Right? So I'm not going to get into that.
But the comment, did it hurt your sentiments as a Hindu?
I don't even remember what the comment was. I'm not in the business of following other people's comments and responding to them. If it's policy, if it's related to the government, if it's related to finance, you ask me.
But it is related to your party, sir.
The party is the party, the government is the government. I'm nobody in the party. I'm not even an office bearer in the party. I'm a member in the party. I'm not a party spokesperson.
But doesn't it concern you being a member of the party?
No.
That comments like this, I mean, not by, someone who's in the cadre.
I am a member of the party
Parliament.
and I am a minister in the government. You ask me anything about the government, it's my job to answer because I am a minister in the government. You ask me about the party, I am not qualified to answer. I am not even an office bearer in the party. I don't even have the lowest office. I'm simply a member of the party.
Okay.
The party will answer for the party. I answer for the government based on the portfolios that I hold.
Let me ask you then, as a practicing Hindu, does it hurt your sentiment?
I don't worry. My faith is very deep. I don't worry what anybody else says, whether they're BJP or the ADMK or the DMK or the Congress. My faith is so deeply rooted in me that it's not affected by the comments of anybody else. I don't need anybody else to wish me. I don't care what anybody else says against me. My faith is part of who I am. It's a relationship between me and the Almighty. And I don't really pay attention to what anybody else says about it.
Okay. Recently, in fact, just yesterday, you had the Supreme Court taking up the issue of the EWS quota. And your party, the DMK, has taken a very, very clear stand on it. You had Mr. Stalin put out a statement yesterday where he said that we've taken it's been a setback really in the fight for social justice. Why is it that the DMK believes that a pro-poor quota that's over and above your caste quota is something that affects social justice?
Again, I am only a member of the party. I am not an office bearer. I simply don't have the standing or the mandate to second guess or issue statements after the leader of the party has issued a statement. I'll give you a personal opinion if you want.
Sure.
At a personal opinion, I worry that this judgment contradicts previous judgments of the Supreme Court in two clear ways. The first way, previous judgments have said that you cannot have reservation on the basis of economic conditions alone. This contradicts that. The second is that the total quota of reservations should not exceed a certain percentage.
Yeah.
This contradicts that. So I say as a citizen, as an administrator, as I have said in multiple contexts on multiple occasions, the great trouble we have as administrators is that we are seeing Supreme Court judgments that are contradictory to each other. And so I'm sitting on the GST Council, right? In the GST Council, we have a group of ministers on how to apply GST to casinos, horse racing, and online gaming. the whole committee is frozen. The GOM is frozen because there are like 20 cases from 1960s till this March, where the definition of what is considered a game of skill and game of chance and whether horse racing falls into A or B, there are conflicting opinions coming out of Supreme Court judgments. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you have Supreme Court judgments that are contradictory to each other, now you find it difficult to administer a government because you don't know which one to follow at what time, right? Case in point, of course, a much less consequential issue on how to tax horse racing. Is it a game of skill or game of chance? How to tax online rummy? Is it a game of skill or game of chance? But this same principle applies here also. In fact, I just was in Chennai. I'll give you the context. Sure. I was invited to a book by a former judge of the Madras High Court, Justice A K Rajan, and one of the other guests of honor was a retired Supreme Court judge. And the title of the book is "The Constitution is Not What It Is." The Constitution of India is not what it is. And it's a riff off of a statement made by a very senior judge in the US, who at one point I said, the Constitution of the United States is not what it is what we say it is. Basically, that's the job of the judges to interpret the Constitution. Sure. That is the weighty responsibility that lies on the shoulders of the judiciary. Now, if the judiciary doesn't follow precedent, and then I cited an example actually, I cited an actual instance. I used to live in the US, as you may know. In the Jersey City Courthouse, which is then one of the eminent buildings, there is an inscription, stone inscription. And it says, "Precedent makes law. If you stand well, stand still." Right? Always check for the precedent before you make a decision and be very reluctant to overstep or upturn it because you have now created a new law. That's basically the implication of that. Precedent makes law. If you stand well, stand still. Be very reluctant to go against precedent because you're upsetting a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be happening today. Right? I'm saying all the way from horse racing and online rummy to reservations. So as a citizen and as an administrator of multiple departments in the cabinet, these judgments worry me because they're contradictory to established precedent. That's all I'll say. I'm not saying it about anything else. The party, the president has already spoken.
The only question is that in a state like Tamil Nadu, there's already 69% reservation in the state. So, you know, the question of the cap on 50% is something that's already been exceeded by the state of Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, again, I don't want to get into the technicals. I'm not the minister for this.
Sure.
I personally, by my certificate, fall into the open quota. And I have done all my education in my life on that quota. And it is the system that we know, right? And we have lived with it. So again, as an individual, I don't want to comment about upsetting that system.
But do you believe there should be a quota for the poor, the economically weaker sections? Because, you know, there is a question of economic justice here that comes in.
Yeah, it's hard for me to equate. Again, I want to talk technically. I'm not the right guy to talk philosophically. The party president has taken a view. I have two technical problems because I'm also the Minister for Human Resources of the government of Tamil Nadu, which means that application of these in the reservations will also affect us. I have two technical problems. The first technical problem is it's very hard to define what is economically weak. For example, the current levels of 8 lakhs, 9 lakhs and all that far exceed the income tax threshold of 5 lakhs. Right? So if you have a income tax threshold of 5 lakhs, which is already about 3.5 times the per capita income or 3 times the per capita income of the country, and then you set a poor quota that is a number that's 1.5 or 2 times that. The question is that the definition of economically weak? Right?
Yeah.
It's just a mathematical question. I'm not talking about any philosophy. I'm just talking about math. The second problem I have is if you look at all those places where this EWS quota has been implemented, the cutoff mark for EWS is much, much lower than the cutoff mark for Adi Dravidas or scheduled tribes. You understand what I'm trying to say? That there's very much less competition for the EWS quota than there is for even the Adi Dravida quota, right? Communities that have been historically oppressed for thousands of years. Even those now have to meet a higher threshold to get the reservation than the EWS. right? So in implementation, these things worry me. The intent is the intent. No, something is not going right. If the EWS quota cutoff is so much lower than any other cutoff for tribals or for Adi Dravidars or for BCs or for MBCs or for OBCs or for anybody. I'm not talking my own book, right? I'm in the open quota.
Understood.
Or my children or whoever. But the maths of it, when I look at the outcomes, worry me. And I also have a greater concern about the design of it in the first place, based on the statistics I gave you. Right?
There's also a question about merit that comes in here. We're talking about reservation for this, reservation for that. What happens at the end of the day to merit? You look at a 69%, let's say, in Tamil Nadu already, plus a 10%.
Yeah,
what do you do then?
Merit's a very complicated thing, right? Like, I've said this extensively, so again, at the risk of boring myself, I don't want to repeat it. But merit's a very complicated thing. I'll give you a data point, just so you can see what I mean. We had 2 years of almost continuous school shutdown in Tamil Nadu, in much of the country, in fact, much of the world for COVID. Right? Yes. Now, what we found, we had this amazing kind of good fortune that we had done a baseline survey in the government of Tamil Nadu through the planning department, through the MIT, US, JPAL MOU, had done a baseline survey of learning levels of children. Right? In 0 to 8 or 3 to 8 or something. And it showed some pretty, less than glorified numbers that we needed to fix a lot. But it gave us a baseline. So once we had the baseline, we took another survey of the same exact individuals at the end of the lockdown, and then about 8 months after the lockdown was lifted and kids have been going to school. And we did it for 2 reasons. One, to see what was the effect.
Okay.
2, Tamil Nadu, in maiden budget, we announced a remedial program for bringing children back to school. And we found that, and when we implemented this program called Illam Thedi Kalvi, that is like after school programs in every block, in every village, in every urban area with volunteers. It's a wonderful program, probably the best program we've done in the 18 months that we've been in office as of yesterday. It showed some profound results, and we're very, very happy with the program because I think it's pioneering. It showed like great added benefit for recovery. But that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making here is that over 2 years, the learning loss varied dramatically. The average learning loss was really 2 years, meaning an 8-year-old kid was at the level that a 6-year-old kid should have been. The 2 years was pretty much wiped out.
Okay.
But if you looked within the strata, it was hugely different. That is, people whose parents had gone to school or college, people who were economically well off, their learning loss was much lower. Single mothers and mothers who had never been to high school graduation, their children learning was much, much worse. The loss was much worse. So you have now proven the effect of economic and social circumstances. Of course, there's a high correlation between community and access to education because it's an ancestral problem.
Yeah.
But the worse off you are, the less your parents had learning, the more likely you are not going to have the opportunity to learn. Right? Now, thank God, our Illam Thedi Kalvi actually showed the reverse of that, meaning the worst affected students got the best benefit of the remedial program.
Okay.
Because they'd fallen so far behind.
Yeah.
But you see, just take the simple option, right? Your parents have already studied well. And let's say in my case, I'm not talking about you, let's take my case. My father is a multiple degree graduate, my grandfather is a multiple degree graduate, overseas educated, whatever, we have this legacy. The school shuts. My wife is a master's degree holder, I have a PhD and 2 masters. Of course I can teach my kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And this is not a one generation thing. This is a legacy of these kinds of historical culture in our family. But somebody, let's say, who works as my chauffeur, right? He happens to be Adi Dravidar. He is the first generation who has ever gone to school, and his wife has less education than him, right? If his kid gets locked up, there's nobody to teach them because they have no culture, there's no legacy, there's no adequate continuity in the system. So my point is merit, if I was to go and take an assessment of 8th grade maths course today, it would show great disparity. But the disparity is because they never had the context. Of course, COVID is an extreme example, but I'm just telling you that merit is very hard. That's why from Harvard to MIT to UK, Cambridge and Oxford, are dropping these kinds of standardized IQ tests or equivalents.
Okay.
Because economic and cultural and family circumstances so affect the traditional definition of merit that it's not really a level playing field at all, right? That's what I'm saying. Merit is a very hard concept to segregate from other things. I'm sure you've read the kind of bestseller, The Tyranny of Merit,
yes,
by the Harvard philosophy professor. Yeah.
Yeah, but my question also, with regards to merit is the fact that, let's say, for example, I'm applying to a college and I don't get in because, there's so much of reservation, there are only so many seats available. What is my next best option? I move abroad. Is there a concern that your talented pool then leaves?
Yes and no, right? If you were well enough to go abroad in the first place, you have that option. Many people don't have that. I'm not overly worried about...
So are we saying you can afford it, go?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you were well enough to have that option, then in my job in government, I'm most worried about those who don't have those options, those who are weak, those who are disabled, those who are old, those who need the help of the state the most. That's what social justice means to us. That's why we come to government. We want a more equitable society. We want more inclusive growth. So if you were like my son, will not make it in this cutoff where he's not in a domestic school, but let's say he's not.
Yeah.
I can afford to get my son admitted overseas somewhere, right? It's not a failure of the state because there are other options. The greater problem we would have is people who didn't have that option. Let's say talented people who would have otherwise got in and for various reasons they didn't get in and they don't have the option to go overseas. That worries me a lot more, right? Okay. Because they don't have the means to go.
Address that first.
Yeah, that should be my greater concern. And that I'm saying in Tamil Nadu at least, that is not of immediate big concern for us because we have such an explosion in educational institutions. I'm not guaranteeing they're all great quality. I am the first guy to say we have to do a lot of improvement. Yeah. But right now Tamil Nadu has a 52% gross enrollment ratio. It's among the highest in the world. Right? 52% of college age, entering age children enroll in a degree college. Sometimes one could argue that might be too high, meaning not enough people are going to skilled trades. We're not getting enough ITI and polytechnic students. We're not getting enough highly sophisticated mechanics and auto mechanics and computerized, engine tuning and kind of plumbing and construction trades are being limited because you don't have enough electricians and so forth, right? So the economy actually probably needs a lot more skilled trades. And you look at places like Germany or Australia or France where you have multiple tracks where you can actually have a very successful career being a very skilled technical worker rather than a BA or a BSc. Right? Yeah. So there are things we have to learn. But right now in Tamil Nadu, there are very few places where there is a lack of seats. Right? If you look at the statistics, in engineering colleges, I think the seat capacity 2 years ago was 2.5 lakh a year admission. And only 1.5 were getting filled. There's
so
1 lakh empty seats. In arts and science colleges, even in government colleges, though there may be spotty differences, meaning this district may not have any. If you take the Tamil Nadu average, something like 40% of the government college seats are empty. Government college seats, no money. Right?
Okay.
Effectively zero fees.
Yeah.
So there's a surfeit of opportunities for education. And so I'm not that worried that, of course there's a difference between the best college and the next best college or university. But are you saying you're not going to get education at all? I don't think that's the case.
Still there, is the messaging. It's been an interesting conversation, Mr. Thiagarajan. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope soon that I get to join you in Madurai, where we can perhaps have some coin parotas and curry and enjoy a much more interesting conversation over food. But thank you so much for joining us here on India Today.
I remember the last time you were there was before one of these elections, right?
Before the elections, before you became a finance minister. But it's nice to see that we still get to catch up.
And so I'm happy to see you here in Delhi and hopefully back in Madurai again.
For sure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.